going to get started. Okay, so thanks again. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Maria. I'm a climate justice organizer with the Trade Justice Education Fund. I am going to speak to you tonight about a quick update on how fossil fuel companies are using trade agreements to undermine climate action and how you can help to eliminate that threat. Modern trade agreements are hundreds, if not thousands of pages long. They set a very wide range of rules for the global economy, covering not just tariffs, but medicine patents, food safety standards, banking regulations, government purchasing preferences, internet policy, you name it. At their core, trade agreements are about removing barriers to trade and establishing new rights for big corporations. The right to move goods across borders, the right to invest across borders, and guaranteed market access for goods and services. To most people on their face, these sound like very reasonable, boring things, but we have to remember that coal, oil, and gas are all goods moved across borders. Fossil fuel corporations are international companies that invest across borders. So if you want to stop a pipeline or an export terminal from being built, if you want to prevent companies from fracking, if you want to ban the sale of certain plastic-made goods, any of that can be considered a violation of a company's trade agreement right and thus subject to attack. And that is exactly what's happening. So in July, the company TC Energy, often better known as TransCanada, formally announced that it is launching a $15 billion suit under a trade deal called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which I'm sure we've all heard of, because the United States refused to grant the company operating permits for the Keystone XL pipeline. That $15 billion that TC Energy is demanding doesn't just cover the company's initial infrastructure investment to build the pipeline, but also its loss of future expected profits. Let that sink in for a second. If taxpayers are required to pay the fossil fuel industry for their loss of future profits every time climate activists manage to stop them from polluting or shut down a pipeline, large-scale policies that limit climate pollution that we need to survive will become much, much harder to enact. The Keystone case is, unfortunately, just one of over 1,100 active trade cases around the world. This map shows just a handful of them. Not all have to do with climate, but fossil fuel companies bring more cases than any other industry. And more than 1 in 3 of all new cases over the past decade has targeted policies affecting oil and gas extraction, mining, or power plants. So one of these dots, the Lone Pine versus Canada, is a US company which is demanding over $100 million because the province of Quebec banned fracking under the St. Lawrence River. Another example, I wish I had an image for this, is a coal-fired power plant that had its operating permits denied in Germany and used a trade challenge to get the permits reinstated. We suspect they also won an undisclosed payout from German taxpayers. One that's been in the news a lot recently, somewhere down here, is an Ecuadorian court order that required Chevron to pay $9.5 billion to clean up oil spills in the Amazon and provide healthcare for affected indigenous communities. That was overturned, with a demand now pending that the government paid a company instead. And there was a recent ruling in this case that requires the leader of that indigenous tribe to pay the Chevron team's legal fees. To date, corporations have won the majority of cases that have made it to a decision in these tribunals. The average amount awarded in each case has been $438 million, but awards have gone into the billions, and the largest amount ever claimed in a single case was over $500 billion. One key thing to know is that most of these are cases that would be laughed out of the US court system. You want us to pay you for the profits that you might have made if you didn't have to meet environmental standards? That's not going to happen in the US courts, but that's exactly what's happening under these trade agreements, and it's a very real threat to climate action. If governments are now expected to find literally trillions of dollars to pay corporations to compensate fossil fuel companies for their lost expected profits, it's going to make it that much more difficult for rich countries like the United States to make the major greenhouse gas reductions we need on the timescale we need to make them on. Low and middle income countries with less money to burn may find it's too difficult to rein in fossil fuel companies at all. They don't have that kind of money lying around. And at minimum, allowing these trade attacks to move forward would mean massive amounts of money wasted on payouts to polluters, rather than invested in things like green energy, public transportation, disaster relief, and a just transition. The solution to this problem is very simple. We need to make climate policies immune to trade attacks. First, we need to eliminate what's called Investor-State Dispute Settlement, or ISDS, the system under which transnational corporations can individually challenge government policies as a trade violation in international trade tribunals. Joe Biden doesn't like that system. Even Donald Trump didn't like that system. Trade justice activists around the world have made a lot of headway against ISDS in recent years. It needs to go all together. So the first step is preventing corporations from directly challenging climate policies via trade agreements. The other step is preventing them from getting governments to challenge each other's climate policies. No more of this, the US challenging India over its solar program incentives, and India challenging the US over its solar program incentives. We don't have time anymore for this strategy of handling WTO disputes. We need what's called a peace clause at the World Trade Organization, under which all countries agree that trade challenges over climate policies are off the table. There's already a WTO peace clause for food security measures. Extending that precedent to climate is a no-brainer. To close, let me say that the reason I'm here today is we have a real opportunity right now to eliminate trade pacts' threats to climate action. Many of the key players in the Biden administration, including the president himself, have the right inclinations on all of this. The European Union is also starting to be upset about all the hits they've been taking under these trade deals financially. A lot of other countries were bullied into signing these trade deals by the US and the EU in the first place. So momentum is on our side. More so, this isn't something that needs approval by Congress. Republicans can't block it. We can absolutely win here. The challenge we face is that even among climate activists, most people still don't know this issue exists at all. So we need to implement what's called the vampire strategy. Drag this bloodsucker out of the shadows and expose it to the light of day. I'm asking for your help in two ways. First, we're helping to circulate an organizational sign-on letter to the president about this issue. We'd really appreciate it if your group would sign on. Second, we have a social media toolkit with template Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram posts about this issue. We'd love for your group, and really for each of you as individuals, to post some information about this issue to your accounts. Links to the social media toolkit and to the letter are both going to be in the chat tonight. Taking just those two steps would help us out a lot. Here's my contact information. If anyone wants to get in touch, please follow us on social media, and I'm happy to take questions now, if there are any.